metal crashing against marble. That was the sound that ended 20 lives and saved one. Most people think the Mafia is about grand sit-downs and horses' heads in beds. It isn't. It's about the silence before the scream. It's about the waitress filling your water glass who sees the gun tucked into a waistband before you do. Sienna Brooks didn't want to be a hero. She just wanted to pay her rent. But when she looked into Roman Castiglione's eyes and saw his death walking through the front door, she made a choice. "Run when I drop the tray," she whispered, and that whisper started a war that would burn the city to the ground. This isn't a fairy tale. This is how blood gets washed out of silk suits. Rain lashed against the heavy velvet drapes of Café Vittoria, turning the cobblestones of Hanover Street into slick black mirrors reflecting the neon signs of Boston's North End. Inside, the air smelled of espresso, expensive cologne, and underlying fear. Sienna Brooks adjusted her apron, the starched fabric digging into her waist. She had been working the dinner shift at Vittoria's for 6 months, long enough to know the unspoken rules. Rule number 1. You don't look at the table in the back corner. Rule number 2. You never interrupt the men when they stop talking. Rule number 3. If the kitchen staff suddenly disappears for a smoke break, all at once you get out. Tonight, the kitchen was empty. Sienna picked up a heavy silver tray, loading it with 3 espressos and a glass of sambuca neat with 3 coffee beans floating in it, the Mosca. Health, wealth, and happiness, a bitter joke considering who ordered it. Roman Castiglione sat at the corner table, his back to the wall. He was younger than the other dons who frequented the place, maybe 32, with the kind of sharp, predatory handsomeness that made women stare and men check their wallets. He was the underboss of the Castiglione crime family, the man who controlled the unions from the seaport to Southie. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Sienna's car, and he was currently laughing at something his bodyguard Enzo was saying. Sienna moved toward the table. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She had seen him. 10 minutes ago, a man had entered through the service door. He wasn't a delivery guy. He was wearing a janitor's uniform that was 2 sizes too big, and his boots were military-grade tactical non-slip kitchen shoes. He was currently standing in the service alcove, screwing a suppressor onto a Sig Power P226. Sienna had grown up in South Boston. Her father, a low-rent bookie named Mickey, had taught her to spot a setup before she could read. "Look at the hands, Si," he used to say before he disappeared into the Charles River. A working man has rough hands. A shooter has calluses on his trigger finger and calm eyes. The janitor had dead eyes. She reached the table. Roman didn't look up. He was busy peeling the foil off a pack of cigarettes. "Your coffee." "Mr. Castiglione," Sienna said. Her voice didn't shake. She was a good liar. She had to be to survive this city. Roman looked up then. His eyes were dark, almost black, framed by thick lashes. He paused lighter halfway to his cigarette. He saw something in her face. He was an apex predator. He recognized the scent of adrenaline. "You're new," Roman said, his voice a low baritone that seemed to vibrate through the table. 6 months, she corrected. She placed the sambuca down. As she leaned in to place the espresso, she invaded his personal space, a cardinal sin in his world. Enzo the bodyguard tensed his hand, dipping toward his jacket. Sienna didn't pull away. She leaned closer, her lips inches from Roman's ear, the smell of her vanilla perfume mixing with his tobacco. "Kitchen is empty." She murmured the words, barely breath. "Shooter in the service alcove." Run when I drop the tray." Roman froze. For a split-second time, seemed to suspend. He didn't look at the service alcove. He didn't look at Enzo. He looked right into Sienna's hazel eyes, assessing the truth. He saw the terror there, but he also saw the resolve. He gave the slightest nod. 1 millimeter. Sienna straightened up, her heart screaming. She turned, taking a step back as if she had forgotten something. She gripped the heavy silver tray with both hands. It was solid brass underneath the plating, heavy enough to dent a floor. The service door creaked. The janitor stepped out, raising the gun. Sienna let go. Clang, crash! The sound was deafening in the quiet restaurant. The heavy tray hit the terrazzo floor, shattering the china cups. The noise was like a gunshot itself. Simultaneously, Roman moved. He didn't stand up. He kicked the heavy oak table upward. The table flipped, acting as a shield, just as the thwip-thwip of suppressed gunfire chewed into the wood where his chest had been seconds ago. "Down!" Roman roared, grabbing Sienna's wrist and yanking her behind the overturned table. Enzo wasn't so lucky. He had stood up to draw his weapon, taking 2 rounds to the chest. He collapsed backward, knocking over a wine rack. Red wine and blood pooled together on the floor. "Who are you?" Roman growled, pulling a snub-nosed revolver from an ankle holster. He checked the cylinder. 5 rounds. "Just the waitress," Sienna gasped, pressing herself into the carpet. "Well, waitress," Roman said, his eyes scanning the room as glass rained down around them. "You just quit your job." Bullets were turning the high-end Italian upholstery into Swiss cheese. The shooter wasn't alone. 2 more men had burst through the front entrance wearing balaclavas and wielding compact submachine guns. "Back door!" Roman yelled over the noise. He popped up, firing 2 shots. One struck the janitor in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Move! Move!" He kept a grip on Sienna's wrist, his grip like iron. They scrambled on hands and knees through the debris of the dining room toward the kitchen swing doors. Sienna slipped on the spilled wine, but Roman hauled her up, practically throwing her through the stainless steel doors. The kitchen was silent, ghostly empty. A pot of marinara sauce was bubbling on the stove, abandoned. "Out the delivery exit," Roman commanded. He shoved her ahead of him, turning to fire 1 shot blindly through the swing doors to keep the shooters' heads down. They burst out into the alleyway. The rain was torrential now. A black Audi RS7 was parked illegally near the dumpster Roman's car. "Keys!" Roman patted his pockets, swearing. Enzo had the keys. The back door of the restaurant flew open. "Get in the truck!" Sienna screamed, pointing to a rusted blue Ford F-150 parked 3 spots down. "It's mine." Roman didn't argue. They sprinted for the truck. Sienna fumbled with her keys, her hands slick with rain and adrenaline. A bullet sparked off the brick wall inches from her face, sending stone fragments into her cheek. She didn't flinch. She jammed the key in, twisted, and the old engine roared to life with a cough and a sputter. Roman dove into the passenger seat just as Sienna threw the truck into reverse. She slammed the gas. The heavy truck careened backward, smashing into the shins of the first gunman exiting the alley. He screamed as he was pinned between the Ford's bumper and the brick wall. Sienna shifted to drive, spinning the wheel. Tires squealed on the wet asphalt, and they shot out of the alley onto Hanover Street, fishtailing wildly. "Take a left. Get on Storrow Drive," Roman barked, looking in the side mirror. A black SUV was already peeling out of the alley behind them. "I know the roads," Sienna snapped back. She ran a red light, narrowly missing a taxi. Roman looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the chaos started. She was soaking wet. Her waitress uniform ruined a smear of blood on her cheekbone. She was driving like a getaway pilot, checking mirrors, anticipating turns. "Where did you learn to drive like this?" Roman asked, reloading his revolver with loose rounds from his pocket. "My dad owed money to the Irish in Southie," she said, swerving around a stopped bus. "We moved a lot, usually in the middle of the night, usually fast." "Who was your dad?" "Mickey the Mouse Brooks." Roman actually laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Mickey the Mouse, the guy who tried to sell fake lottery tickets to the Patriarcha family in Providence." "That's him," Sienna said, eyes glued to the rearview mirror. "The SUV is gaining. They have more horsepower." "Yeah, but we have heavy steel," Roman said. He rolled down the window. The wind and rain howled into the cab. "Keep it steady." He leaned out the window, rain plastering his dark hair to his skull. He took aim at the pursuing SUV. He didn't fire wildly. He waited. 1 second. 2. Bang! The front tire of the SUV blew out. The vehicle swerved violently to the right, jumping the curb and smashing into a lamppost in a shower of sparks and glass. Roman pulled himself back inside and rolled up the window. He looked at the gun, then at Sienna. "We need to ditch this truck," he said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "They'll have the plates." "My tips are in the glove box," Sienna said, her voice finally starting to tremble. The adrenaline was fading, leaving the cold reality. "That's $200. Roman reached into his jacket, pulled out a money clip thick enough to choke a horse, and tossed it onto the dashboard. It slid toward her. "There's $5,000, he said. "Consider it a severance package." Sienna glanced at the money, then back at the road. She didn't touch it. "I don't want your money. I want to know why Viktor Kovac is trying to kill you." Roman stiffened. The air in the truck instantly grew 10 degrees colder. He turned slowly to face her, the gun resting casually on his thigh. "How do you know that name?" he asked, his voice lethal. Sienna gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. "Because before I worked at Vittoria's, I worked at the Blue Velvet, Kovac's club, and I know what he does to girls who hear things they shouldn't." Roman studied her profile. This wasn't just a random act of kindness. She hadn't saved him because it was the right thing to do. She had saved him because she needed a weapon to use against Kovac. "Pull over," Roman said. "What? I said pull over. Under the bridge." Sienna pulled the truck onto the shoulder beneath the Zakim Bridge. The sodium lights cast long orange shadows. The rain drummed relentlessly on the roof. Roman turned his body toward her. "You didn't save me to protect me, Sienna. You saved me because you want Kovac dead. Why?" Sienna turned off the engine. The silence was heavy. She looked at Roman, her eyes hard. "He didn't just hurt girls, Roman. He took my sister. Bella. She disappeared from his club 3 years ago. The police said she ran away. I know she didn't." Roman watched her. He knew the look in her eyes. It was the same look he saw in the mirror every morning. Vengeance. "If Kovac took her," Roman said quietly, "she's dead." "I know," Sienna whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't want to find her alive. I want to find where he buried her, and I want to put a bullet in his head. You're the only one strong enough to get close to him." Roman nodded slowly. He understood this transaction. It wasn't charity. It was business. "Drive to Chelsea," Roman commanded. "I have a safe house. We need to get off the street before Kovac finds out he missed." "And then?" Sienna asked, starting the engine. "And then," Roman said, looking out at the rainy city skyline, "we go to war." The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was an abandoned textile mill on the edge of Chelsea, converted into loft apartments that never went to market. It was a fortress of brick and iron, overlooking the murky, mystic river. Roman guided Sienna through the freight elevator, punching a code into a keypad that looked decades old, but beeped with modern digital precision. The heavy doors slid open to reveal a sprawling industrial space. Leather furniture, a wall of monitors, and a medical station in the corner. "Sit." Roman pointed to a couch. He went straight to a wall safe, spinning the dial. He pulled out a fresh shirt and a heavy first aid kit. Sienna sank into the leather. Her legs felt like jelly. "Do you live here?" "I exist here," Roman said. He stripped off his ruined suit jacket and the blood-soaked dress shirt underneath. Sienna looked away, then looked back. She couldn't help it. His torso was a map of violence. Scars, some jagged, some surgical lines, crisscrossed his olive skin. A tattoo of St. Michael the Archangel covered his back, the sword tip disappearing into his waistband. He sat on the coffee table in front of her, opening the medical kit. "You're bleeding." Sienna touched her cheek. Her fingers came away red. "Just a scratch from the brick." "Infection kills as fast as a bullet in this town," he said, dabbing antiseptic onto a cotton pad. He leaned in. His hands, which had fired a gun minutes ago with steady precision, were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the cut on her cheek. For a moment, the distance between them collapsed. Sienna looked at his eyes, dark, guarded, ancient. "Why did Kovac move on you tonight?" Sienna asked, wincing slightly at the sting of the alcohol. "The families have a truce." "Truces are just pauses between wars," Roman said, applying a butterfly bandage. "Kovac is Russian. I'm Italian. We share territory in the shipping yards. Last week, a container of his merchandise went missing. He thinks I took it." "Did you?" Roman smirked a cruel, handsome expression. "I burned it. It was girls, Sienna. He was shipping girls." Sienna's breath hitched. "Like Bella." "Like Bella," he confirmed. "I don't deal in flesh. I deal in vices, gambling numbers, booze. But I don't sell people. Kovac crossed a line. I burned his profit. Tonight was his receipt." Sienna felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. He wasn't a good man, she knew that. He was a killer. But he had a soul. "My phone," Roman said, standing up abruptly. He walked to the bank of monitors. "I need to make a call. Don't answer the door. Don't go near the windows." He picked up a burner phone and dialed. Sienna watched him pace. "It's me," Roman said into the phone. "I'm out. Enzo is dead. No, it was a setup. Listen to me, Marco. The kitchen staff was cleared out. Someone on the inside gave the green light. I want names." "No, don't tell the boss yet. If there's a leak, it could be coming from the top." He hung up and threw the phone onto the couch. He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "Is it bad?" Sienna asked. "It's worse than bad. To hit me in Vittoria's that requires permission, or extreme arrogance." Roman walked over to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to her. "Drink. It'll settle the nerves." Sienna took a sip. It burned, but it grounded her. "So we're alone." "We," Roman raised an eyebrow. "There is no we, Sienna. Tomorrow morning I'm putting you on a plane to London. I have contacts there. You'll have a new name, a job." "No," Sienna said, setting the glass down hard. Roman stepped closer, looming over her. "Excuse me. I said no. I'm not going to London. I'm staying here. You need me." "I need a soldier, not a waitress." "You need a ghost," Sienna countered, standing up to meet his gaze. She was a foot shorter than him, but she didn't back down. "Kovac knows your men. He knows your soldiers. He doesn't know me. I was invisible tonight until I dropped that tray. I can get into places you can't. I can get into the blue velvet." Roman laughed, but it was devoid of humor. "You want to walk back into the lion's den? He'll kill you." "He won't," she said, "because I'm applying for a job. They're always hiring. I go in, I find his office, I find out where he keeps his records. I find out where Bella is, and I tell you where he sleeps." Roman stared at her. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the cunning. She was Mickey the Mouse's daughter, all right. She was gambling her life on a long shot. "If you get caught," Roman said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I can't save you. If you go in there, you're on your own until the shooting starts. I've been on my own for a long time." "Roman," she said softly. Roman looked at her lips, then her eyes. The tension in the room shifted from danger to something electric. He reached out his thumb, tracing the line of her jaw. "You're crazy," he murmured. "I'm motivated," she whispered back. Suddenly the monitors on the wall flashed red. A silent alarm. Roman spun around, his eyes locking on the screen, showing the external feed. 3 black SUVs were pulling up to the chain-link fence of the mill. "How?" Sienna breathed. "The phone," Roman realized, his face paling. "The burner phone. Marco. He tracked the signal. It wasn't Kovac who set me up." He looked at Sienna, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "It was my brother," Roman said. "Marco is the only one who had the frequency for that phone." He grabbed his Sig Sauer and tossed a smaller 9mm Glock to Sienna. She caught it, her hands surprisingly steady. "Do you know how to use that?" he asked. "Point and shoot," she said. "Safety off." "Good," Roman said, racking the slide of his weapon. "Because the war just came to us. Stay behind me." He killed the lights in the loft, plunging them into darkness. "When I drop the tray," Sienna whispered in the dark, echoing the moment that started it all. "No." Roman's voice came from the shadows, fierce and protective. "This time we don't run. This time we hunt." The loft went pitch black, save for the strobing red light of the silent alarm on the far wall. The hum of the refrigerator died as Roman cut the main breaker, plunging the massive industrial space into a suffocating silence. Sienna crouched behind a heavy leather armchair, the cold steel of the Glock 19 pressing against her palm. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. She had grown up around low-level wise guys, men who broke thumbs for late payments. But this was different. This was war. 3 bogies coming up the east stairwell. Roman's voice was a ghost in the darkness coming from her left. 2 more on the freight elevator. They're pinching us. The elevator is a death trap, Sienna whispered, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "If they open those doors, they have no cover." "They won't open them," Roman replied, the sound of him checking his magazine audible in the quiet. "They'll blow them." A second later, a dull thump vibrated through the floorboards. The heavy steel doors of the freight elevator bowed outward, smoke curling from the seams. The lock melted, and the doors were kicked open. 2 figures in tactical gear spilled into the room, their weapons mounted with flashlights that cut through the gloom like lightsabers. Roman didn't wait. He fired 3 times. The shots were deafening in the enclosed space. The first attacker dropped his Kevlar vest, absorbing the rounds, but the impact knocking the wind out of him. The second man scrambled for cover behind a granite kitchen island. "Move, Sienna, go to the north wall." Roman roared, abandoning stealth. Bullets began to chew up the furniture. Sienna scrambled on her hands and knees, glass shards from a shattered vase slicing into her palms. She reached the brick wall and pressed herself into the shadows behind a heavy velvet curtain. From her vantage point, she saw the stairwell door burst open. 3 more men. They moved with military precision. Roman was pinned down behind the turned-over sofa. He was returning fire, but he was suppressed. One of the men from the stairwell unclipped a grenade from his belt. Sienna's heart stopped. If he threw that, Roman was dead. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She just remembered Mickey's voice. "Don't look at the target. Sigh, look at the space the target is moving into." She raised the Glock, gripping it with both hands to steady the shake. The man pulled the pin. He wound up his arm. Sienna fired. She missed the man. But the bullet smashed into a breaker box on the wall directly behind him, sending a shower of sparks raining down. The man flinched, startled by the explosion of electricity. His throw went wide. The grenade skittered across the polished concrete floor, rolling away from Roman and toward the kitchen island, where the first attacker was hiding. "Cover!" Roman yelled. Boom! The explosion blew out the windows and sent a shock wave through the loft. The kitchen island disintegrated into shrapnel. The attacker behind it ceased to be a problem. Roman used the chaos to move. He was a blur of violence, closing the distance to the stairwell team. He engaged them at close quarters, using the pistol like a hammer as much as a gun. It was brutal, efficient, and terrifying to watch. Silence returned as quickly as it had left, replaced only by the ringing in Sienna's ears and the smell of cordite and pulverized drywall. Roman stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving. He walked over to one of the downed men, the one who had tried to throw the grenade. He was groaning, clutching a shattered leg. Roman grabbed the man by his tactical vest and hauled him up. He ripped the black mask off. It was a face Sienna didn't know, but Roman evidently did. His expression shifted from rage to a hollow, cold despair. "Dante," Roman spat. "You used to drive my mother to church on Sundays." The man Dante coughed blood. "Strictly business, Roman. You know how it is." "Who sent you?" Roman asked, though he already knew the answer. He pressed the barrel of his gun to Dante's kneecap. "Marco." Dante gasped. "He said you were weak. He said you were letting the Russians walk all over us. He made a deal with Kovac." The betrayal hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Marco Castiglione, Roman's own brother, hadn't just sold him out. He had partnered with the enemy to do it. "Where is he?" Roman demanded. "The shipyard," Dante wheezed. "Midnight. Meeting with Kovac to finalize the territory split. They think you're already dead." Roman stared at the man for a long moment. Then he pistol-whipped him across the temple, knocking him unconscious. He wouldn't kill him. Not yet. He needed a witness later. "We have to go," Roman said, turning to Sienna. He looked at her, really seeing her. She was covered in dust, holding a gun, and she hadn't run. "You saved my life again," he said, his voice rough. "We're even," she whispered, lowering the gun. "Now get me out of here." They took the fire escape down into the alley. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and glistening. They didn't go to a car. Too risky. Roman led her to the riverbank, where a nondescript fishing boat was tied up. "Get in," he said, untying the ropes. As they drifted out into the mystic river, the engine putting softly. Sienna sat on the wooden bench, hugging her knees. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her shivering. Roman took off his jacket, a new one he had grabbed from the loft, and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled of him, cedar gunpowder, and rain. "My brother," Roman said, staring at the dark water. We grew up in the same room. I took a knife for him when we were teenagers, and he sells me to a Russian butcher for shipping containers. Sienna looked at his profile. It was etched in stone, hard and unforgiving, but she saw the crack in the armor. Family is tricky, Sienna said softly. My dad loved me, but he loved gambling more. In the end, he bet our rent money on a horse named Second Chance, and lost. We slept in the car for a month. Betrayal doesn't always look like a gun, Roman. Sometimes it looks like empty promises. Roman looked at her. The boat rocked gently. I'm going to kill him, Sienna. My own brother. I have to. I know, she said. And she did. In his world, there was no forgiveness for this. But not tonight. Tonight, we disappear. I know a place, Roman said, steering the boat toward the darker industrial docks of South Boston. An old boxing gym in Southie. The owner, Old Sal, owes me his life. No phones, no cameras. We regroup there. And then, Sienna asked, and then? Roman's eyes caught the reflection of the moon, cold and sharp. We act on the intel. Marco and Kovac are meeting at the shipyard, but we can't hit them there. Too much security. We need to strike where they feel safe. The Blue Velvet, Sienna said. Exactly. Roman nodded. Kovac keeps his leverage there, his blackmail, his records. If Marco is working with him, the proof of their deal is in Kovac's office. I need that proof to show the commission. If I kill a boss without proof of treason, the other families will hunt me down. I need the ledger. And I'm the only one who can get it, Sienna said. Roman didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, his expression torn. I don't want to send you in there. You don't have a choice, she said firmly. And neither do I. This ends with Kovac dead, or it doesn't end. Old Sal's gym smelled of stale sweat leather and wintergreen oil. It was a relic of a bygone era tucked away in a basement off Dorchester Avenue. For 2 days it became their war room. Sienna slept on a cot in the back office, while Roman slept on a mat in the ring. The intimacy of the situation was suffocating. They ate takeout Chinese food on the floor, mapping out the layout of the Blue Velvet on a piece of cardboard. The club has 3 levels, Sienna explained, using a chopstick to point. Main floor is general admission. Bar dance floor. Basement is VIP. That's the red room. Invite only. High rollers, politicians, and mobsters. And the office, Roman asked. He was doing push-ups while she spoke, a rhythmic, hypnotic motion. He never seemed to stop moving, as if stopping would let the rage catch up to him. Top floor, penthouse level, private elevator access only, keycard required. So you need to swipe a keycard from a manager, Roman said, standing up and wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. Not a manager, Sienna corrected. Kovac carries the master key. I've seen him use it. Roman stopped. You have to get close to Kovac, physically close. I can handle him, Sienna said, though her stomach twisted at the thought. He's a monster, Sienna. You don't know what he does to women. I know exactly what he does. She snapped, her voice rising. He took Bella. I'm not going in there blind, Roman. I'm going in there angry. Roman walked over to her. The air between them crackled. He reached out, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered on her neck, his thumb resting on her pulse point. It was hammering. If he touches you, Roman whispered, his voice dark and possessive, I will burn this city down to get to him. Sienna looked up at him. The connection was undeniable. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was gravity. "Teach me what I need to know," she said breathlessly. "Don't protect me. Arm me." The transformation took 3 hours. With the help of a local girl who owed old Sal a favor, Sienna changed everything. The waitress uniform was gone. In its place was a dress that looked like it was made of liquid onyx, backless, plunging neckline, and a slit that went up to her thigh. Her honey-brown hair was dyed a stark, glossy black and styled in loose waves. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating her cheekbones and giving her eyes a feline, dangerous look. She stepped out of the bathroom into the gym. Roman was loading a magazine into a fresh pistol. He looked up, and the magazine clattered to the floor. He stood frozen. He looked at her not as a tactical asset, but as a man looking at a woman who could ruin him. "Too much?" Sienna asked, feeling self-conscious under his intense gaze. "Dangerous," Roman murmured, walking around her. "You look like trouble. Kovac loves trouble." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a delicate diamond choker. "Turn around," he commanded. Sienna turned, sweeping her hair up. Roman fastened the clasp. His fingers brushed the nape of her neck, sending shivers down her spine. "There's a microphone in the central diamond," he whispered against her ear, "and a tracker in the clasp. I'll be in a van 2 blocks away. I hear everything. If you say the word rain, I'm coming in. Front door, back door, through the wall, doesn't matter. I'm coming." "Rain," she repeated. "Turn around." She faced him. He looked at her lips. For a second she thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to. The pull was magnetic. But he stepped back, his jaw tightening. "Let's go get your job," he said. The blue velvet was a fortress of neon and bass. The line wrapped around the block, but Sienna, now going by the name Veronica, walked straight to the bouncer. She didn't ask to come in. She just looked at him with bored, arrogant eyes. "I'm here for the open call," she lied smoothly. "Victor is expecting me." The bouncer hesitated. She looked the part. High-end, expensive, trouble. "Wait here." He grunted into his headset. A moment later, the velvet rope unhooked. Sienna walked in. The bass hit her chest like a physical blow. The club was a sea of body strobe lights and expensive alcohol. She made her way to the bar, scanning the room. She spotted the floor manager, a sharp-faced woman named Katya. Sienna approached her. "I need a job," Sienna said over the music. Katya looked her up and down, sneering. "We're full, honey. Go back to the strip mall." Sienna leaned in. "I worked at Leclerc in Paris for 2 years. I know how to mix a Sazerac. I know which politicians like their scotch neat, and I know how to keep my mouth shut when the envelopes are passed." Katya paused. Leclerc was a legendary mob-run club in France. It was a lie, of course. Sienna had read about it in a magazine, but it was a good lie. "Come with me," Katya said. She led Sienna not to an office, but to the VIP section, the Red Room. It was quieter here. Plush velvet booths, dim lighting, and men in suits who cost more than Sienna's life earnings. And there in the center booth sat Victor Kovac. He was a bear of a man with pale skin, icy blue eyes, and a shaved head. He was flanked by 2 bodyguards. He was currently smoking a cigar and watching the room with dead shark-like eyes. Katya walked Sienna over. "Victor, new girl, says she worked at Leclerc." Kovac turned his gaze to Sienna. It felt like being submerged in ice water. He didn't speak for a long time. He just inhaled smoke and blew it in her direction. "Spin," he said. His voice was thick with a Russian accent. Sienna swallowed her pride and turned slowly, letting the dress do its work. "Paris, yes," Kovac asked. "2 years," Sienna said, keeping her voice low and sultry. "Why are you in Boston? My ex-boyfriend got possessive." She lied. "I needed a new city, and I heard this is where the real money is." Kovac laughed. It was a wet, unpleasant sound. He patted the empty spot on the leather booth next to him. "Sit, Veronica." Sienna sat. Her skin crawled being this close to the man who took her sister. She wanted to claw his eyes out. Instead, she crossed her legs and smiled. "You want a job?" Kovac asked, his hand resting on her knee. His fingers were thick and cold. "I want to make money," she corrected. "Good answer." Kovac signaled for a bottle of vodka. "You start tonight. In here. The red room only. If you do well, maybe you move up." "Up?" Sienna asked innocently. "To the penthouse." Kovac grinned, showing gold-capped teeth. "Where the view is better." Sienna's heart skipped a beat. The penthouse. The office. "I'd like that," she purred. Suddenly the curtain to the booth parted. A man stepped in. Sienna froze. It was Marco Castiglione, Roman's brother. He looked agitated, sweating. He sat down opposite Kovac, not even looking at Sienna. "We have a problem, Victor," Marco said urgently. "Not here," Kovac warned, gesturing to Sienna. "She doesn't matter." Marco waved a hand dismissively. "We found the boat. Roman isn't dead. He's in the city." Sienna felt the blood drain from her face. She kept her expression neutral, frozen in a mask of boredom. But inside she was screaming. Kovac's hand tightened on her knee, painful now. "Alive," Kovac hissed. "You said you handled it." He had help. A girl, the waitress from the restaurant. Kovac turned his head slowly to look at Sienna. He studied her face. The makeup changed her, the hair changed her, but the eyes. Sienna stopped breathing. "A waitress," Kovac mused. He leaned in closer to Sienna, sniffing her neck. "You use vanilla perfume, Veronica." Sienna's mind raced. Bella had worn vanilla. Sienna wore it to remember her. It was a common scent. "Everyone wears vanilla, Victor," she said, her voice steady as a rock. "It brings in the tips." Kovac stared at her for another second, then relaxed, releasing her knee. "True," he chuckled. "Go, Veronica. Get us drinks. We have business." Sienna stood up, her legs feeling like lead. She walked to the bar, her hands shaking so hard she had to grip the marble counter. She touched the diamond choker. "Roman," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "Marco is here. They know you're alive. And I think Kovac has the ledger on him." He patted his jacket when Marco mentioned the deal. Roman's voice came through her earpiece, tight and constrained. "Get out of there, Sienna. It's too hot. Marco might recognize you." "He didn't look at me," she whispered. "I can get the key card. Kovac is drinking. If I can spill a drink on him, get his jacket off. Sienna, no. Abort." "I'm not leaving without the ledger," she hissed. "I see a waiter going over with a tray of shots. I'm going to make a move." "Sienna." She tapped the choker to mute him. She grabbed a bottle of expensive champagne and a towel. She was going to drop a tray. Again. But this time, she wasn't running. The air in the red room was thick enough to choke on a miasma of expensive cigars, cheap morality, and the metallic tang of imminent violence. Sienna stood by the bar, the bottle of Dom Perignon sweating in her grip. Her hands were trembling not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline rage. She had looked into the eyes of the man who sold her sister, and she hadn't blinked. But looking was one thing, stealing from him was another. She tapped the diamond choker once. "I'm going in." She moved through the crowd, her hips swaying in a rhythm that wasn't hers. It was Veronica's. She approached the booth where Kovac and Marco were deep in conversation. Kovac had removed his jacket, draping it over the back of the leather booth. The inside pocket bulged slightly. The keycard. The master pass to the Empire. "Gentlemen," Sienna purred, interrupting Marco mid-sentence. "On the house. To celebrate new partnerships." Kovac looked up, his eyes glassy with vodka. "Ah, Veronica, you pour." Sienna leaned over the table. She uncorked the bottle with a soft pop. She poured a glass for Marco, who ignored her, his eyes fixed on Kovac. She poured a glass for Kovac. Then she executed the move. As she pulled the bottle back, she allowed her elbow to, accidentally, knock the full flute of champagne. The glass tipped, sending a cascade of sticky golden liquid straight into Kovac's lap. "Cazzo!" Kovac roared, jumping up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," Sienna gasped, dropping the bottle on the table and grabbing a cloth napkin. She moved frantically, dabbing at his shirt, her hands flying. "I slipped, I'm so clumsy." "Get away from me, you stupid bitch!" Kovac shouted, shoving her hand away. But it was done. In the chaos of the spill, amidst the flailing hands and the shouting, Sienna's left hand had snaked behind him. Her fingers, nimble from years of counting change and pocketing tips, had slid into the inner pocket of his jacket, draped on the chair. She felt the cool plastic of the keycard. She palmed it, sliding it instantly into the waistband of her dress, hidden by the ruffles. "I'll get you a towel from the back," Sienna stammered, playing the part of the terrified employee. "Get out of my face before I cut it off," Kovac snarled. Marco looked at her. For a split second his eyes narrowed. He looked at her hands, hands that were currently shaking. He looked at the spilled champagne. It was a classic grifter move. Marco knew it, because he had used it himself. "Wait," Marco said, his voice cutting through the music. Sienna froze. "She's just a clumsy girl, Marco," Kovac grunted, wiping his pants. "Let her go." "No." Marco stood up slowly. "She didn't trip. Look at her feet. She's wearing 6-inch heels, but she has the balance of a dancer." She leaned into the spill. Sienna didn't wait to be dissected. She spun around and bolted. "Stop her!" Marco screamed. Sienna kicked off her heels, running barefoot across the sticky floor. She hit the crowd, shoving bodies out of the way. She didn't head for the exit. She headed for the service corridor that led to the private elevator. "Security!" Kovac bellowed. Sienna burst through the service doors, hitting the call button on the elevator. She jammed the stolen keycard into the reader. The light turned green. Ding! The doors slid open. She threw herself inside, hammering the button for the penthouse. Just as the doors began to close, a hand jammed into the gap. It was a bodyguard, a mountain of muscle named Boris. He pried the doors open with a grunt, stepping inside. He grabbed Sienna by the throat, slamming her against the mirrored wall. Her feet lifted off the floor. "Going somewhere, little bird," he grinned. Sienna gagged, clawing at his massive hand. She couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. She reached for the Glock strapped to her thigh, but he pinned her arms. "Rain," she croaked. "Rain, crash!" The elevator ceiling hatch exploded inward. Roman dropped down like a darker angel of death. He landed directly on Boris's shoulders, the momentum driving the giant man to his knees. Roman didn't hesitate. He wrapped the wire of a garrote around Boris's neck and pulled. It was over in seconds. The bodyguard slumped to the floor unconscious. Roman stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. He looked at Sienna, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and relief. "I told you to get out," he said, pulling her into a crushing embrace. "I got the key," she gasped, clutching his lapels. "We're going up." "Marco knows," Roman said, releasing her and checking his weapon. "They're coming up the stairs. We have maybe 3 minutes before this elevator opens into a firing squad." "Then let's make them count," Sienna said. The elevator chimed. Penthouse level. The doors opened. The office was vast, a glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the city of Boston. It was silent, insulated from the thumping bass 5 floors below. "Find the computer," Roman ordered, moving to the door to secure the perimeter. Sienna ran to the massive mahogany desk. She woke the computer. Password protected. "It needs a password," she yelled. Roman fired 2 shots through the heavy oak doors as the handle began to turn. "Try Bella. Kovac is a narcissist, but he's also sentimental about his trophies." Sienna typed B-E-L-L-A. Access denied. She typed V-I-C-T-O-R. Access denied. She looked around the room. Her eyes landed on a painting above the fireplace. It was a disturbingly realistic portrait of a weeping angel. "The angel," she whispered. She typed A-N-G-E-L. Access granted. Files scrolled across the screen. Shipping manifests, payoffs to judges, police bribes, and a folder labeled Project Siren. Sienna clicked it. Her heart stopped. It wasn't just Bella. It was dozens of girls, photos, locations, prices, and at the bottom of the list a status update on Bella Brooks. Subject: Bella Brooks. Status: deceased. Cause: overdose. Disposal site: B Old Harbor. Sienna let out a sound that wasn't human, a keen of pure, unadulterated grief. She slumped against the desk, the strength leaving her legs. "Sienna!" Roman shouted, firing again as the door splinters flew inward. "Focus, I need you." "She's dead," Sienna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He killed her. 3 years ago. She's garbage to him." Roman abandoned the door. He sprinted to her, grabbing her face in his hands. "Look at me," he commanded. "Grieve later. Revenge now. Did you find the connection to Marco?" Sienna sniffled, forcing herself to look at the screen. She scrolled down. There it was. A scanned contract. Transfer of territory, South Boston waterfront. In exchange for 30% of human trafficking revenue. Signed Marco Castiglione. "He signed it," Sienna said, her voice turning to ice. "He sold the territory. He sold the girls." "Print it," Roman said. "Send it to the commission server. Burn him." Sienna hit send. At that moment, the office doors were blown off their hinges. Smoke filled the room. Marco walked in, flanked by Kovac and 3 armed men. "Roman?" Marco smiled, spreading his arms. "I always knew you were hard to kill, but this is just embarrassing." Roman stepped in front of Sienna, shielding her. "It's over, Marco. The commission has the files. Every boss from New York to Chicago just got an email showing you sold Italian soil to the Russians." Marco's smile faltered. He looked at his phone. It was buzzing incessantly. Kovac looked at Marco. "You said you handled the cybersecurity." "I did," Marco snapped. "Evidently not." Kovac snarled. He raised his gun, not at Roman, but at Marco. You are a liability. Bang! Kovac shot Marco in the chest. Roman's brother felt a look of shock on his face as he hit the Persian rug. Roman didn't flinch. Now it's just us, Victor. Kovac laughed, turning his gun on Roman. You and the waitress, how romantic. You can die together. Run when I drop the tray, Sienna whispered. Kovac frowned. What? Sienna kicked the heavy computer monitor off the desk. It wasn't a tray, but it worked. As the monitor crashed to the floor, Roman dove to the right, rolling behind a leather sofa. Sienna dropped behind the heavy oak desk. Kovac fired wildly, the bullets shredding the upholstery. You think you can beat me in my house? Kovac roared, advancing. Roman popped up, firing 2 controlled shots. One hit Kovac in the shoulder, spinning him around. Kovac grunted, but kept coming, switching his gun to his other hand. He was a beast, fueled by adrenaline and vodka. He rounded the desk, aiming at Sienna. Sienna was ready. She wasn't holding the Glock. She was holding a letter opener she had grabbed from the desk, a 10-inch spike of solid brass. As Kovac aimed, she didn't cower. She lunged. She drove the brass spike into Kovac's thigh, twisting it. Kovac screamed, his leg buckling. He collapsed onto one knee. Roman was there in an instant. He kicked the gun out of Kovac's hand. He placed the barrel of his Sig Sauer against Kovac's forehead. For Bella, Roman said. Wait, Sienna said, standing up. Her face was streaked with tears and mascara, but she looked like a queen of the underworld. She walked over to Kovac, who was bleeding and panting on the floor. Where is she? Sienna asked softly. Site B. Where is it? Go to hell. Kovac spat blood at her shoes. Sienna picked up Kovac's fallen gun. She looked at Roman. He didn't stop her. He stepped back, giving her the space. You took the only thing I loved, Sienna said, her voice devoid of emotion. Now I take everything you have. She didn't shoot him in the head. She shot him in the kneecap. Then the other one. Kovac shrieked, writhing in agony. The police are coming, Sienna said, dropping the gun. The files are public. You're going to prison, Victor. And in prison, the Italians will be waiting for you. Roman will make sure of it. Roman nodded solemnly. You won't last a week inside. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Time to go, Roman said, holding out his hand. Sienna took it. She looked at the dead body of Marco, then the ruined form of Kovac. She looked at the empty office that represented so much pain. I'm not a waitress anymore, she said. No, Roman agreed, pulling her towards the fire escape. You're a partner. 6 months later, the Cafe Vittoria had reopened. The bullet holes had been patched, the terrazzo floor polished until it shone like a mirror. But the atmosphere had changed. It was no longer just a place for coffee. It was a sanctuary protected by the most powerful name on the East Coast. Sienna sat at the corner table, the same table where Roman had sat that first night. But she wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a tailored cream suit, her hair styled in a sleek bob. A young waiter, hands shaking slightly, placed an espresso and a sambuca with 3 beans in front of her. Thank you, she said, smiling. Her smile was different now. Less open, more guarded. The smile of a woman who knew where the bodies were buried because she had helped dig the graves. The bell above the door chimed. Roman walked in. He was the Don now. With Marco dead and Kovac's organization dismantled by the feds, with a little help from the anonymous leaks Sienna had provided, Roman had consolidated power. The streets were quiet. He sat down opposite her, taking the espresso. He didn't say hello. He just looked at her with that intensity that still made her breath hitch. The shipment arrived, Roman said quietly. Medical supplies for the clinic in Southie, as you requested. And the other matter? Sienna asked, stirring her drink. Site B, Roman nodded. We found it. We gave Bella a proper burial this morning. St. Augustine's. It was private. Sienna reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers brushed the scar on his knuckle, a souvenir from the night at the mill. Thank you, Roman. You don't thank me, Sienna, he said, interlacing his fingers with hers. You saved me. I save you. That's the deal. Is the deal over? She asked playfully. Now that the war is won. Roman leaned in his dark eyes, dancing with a rare light. The war is never over, Kara. There's always another wolf at the door. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and slid it across the table. But this time, Roman said, I don't want you to run when I drop the tray. I want you to stand next to me. Sienna opened the box. It wasn't a ring. It was a key, an ornate iron key. To the house in Tuscany, Roman said, or the vault in Zurich, or the front door of this city, whatever you want it to be. Sienna closed her hand around the key. The waitress who counted tips was gone. In her place was a woman who had walked through fire and come out holding the flame. She leaned forward, whispering in his ear, echoing the words that had started it all, but with a new promise. I'm not running anywhere, boss. Roman smiled a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his face. He signaled the waiter. Another round, Roman said, and bring the lady whatever she wants. She owns the place. Outside, the rain began to fall on Hanover Street, washing away the dust of the city. But inside, amidst the smell of espresso and the warmth of the lights, everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. And that is the story of how a spilled tray and a whispered warning changed the fate of the Boston underworld. Sienna Brooks proved that you don't need a gun to be dangerous. You just need the courage to speak when everyone else is silent. What did you think of Sienna's transformation? Did she make the right choice, sparing Kovacs for prison? Or should she have finished the job? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of danger, betrayal, and romance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story. We have a new, darker, grittier romance drama coming next week that involves a stolen painting and a bodyguard who knows too much. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep your eyes open and watch where you drop your tray.